Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Emily King, and I'm the program coordinator for the Advanced School of Politics. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few of our upcoming programs. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly with y'all. There we go. So first is the Campaign Leadership College. This is our most extensive school. It is a 9-day intensive for those looking to take on a senior level role in political campaigns. Next is our Candidate Development School. If you or someone you know is running for office, especially in the 2026 cycle, please encourage them to apply for this program. It is our only program specifically trained for candidates, and this will be your last chance to attend before the end of the 2026 election cycle. Finally, we have the comprehensive fundraising training. This 3-day program focuses on equipping nonprofit organizations with the tools they need to succeed. Please note that all 3 of these schools are in person only, held in the DC area. All of that being said, let's get into today's lecture. Matthew Hurtt is the Director of Professional Services at Leadership Institute. Matt has an extensive background in campaigns and politics. He has served as the RNC delegate twice, and today, in addition to leading the Arlington GOP, you can occasionally spot him as a contributor on major news networks. Please join me in welcoming Matthew Hurtt.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. My name is Matthew Hurtt. And as Emily said just a moment ago, I am the Director of Professional Services here at Leadership Institute. So much of what I do is help job seekers build up their resume, draft a cover letter, and find the job or the opportunity that's right for them. So I'm very excited to be sharing a little bit of information and a little bit of personal experience over the next hour to talk about the important things you should be thinking about as you consider the potential of running for office at any level. A little bit more about me. I've worked on a number of campaigns at the state and local level since I first ran for office at the age of 19, which we'll talk about briefly in this presentation, way back in 2006. Served as a delegate to the Republican National Convention on 2 separate occasions in 2012 and 2016. And now I work, and for the last several years have worked in addition to what I do here at Leadership Institute as a communications and fundraising strategist. Love helping prospective candidates and announced candidates in my personal capacity think about how to talk about the issues and how to raise money based on the issues and based on the candidate's resume. In addition to all that, as Emily said just a moment ago, Director of Professional Services, helping conservatives find their role, find your role in the conservative public policy space. In my personal capacity, I'm chairman of a local unit committee, the most local level of politics that you can be involved in, and occasionally on local, national, and international TV outlets. I'm happy to be a resource to you through this presentation and in perpetuity here as Leadership Institute seeks to connect prospective candidates and other conservative activists and professionals with the opportunities that make sense for you. The first thing that I want to share with you is the hidden reality of politics. Now, maybe you're sitting here today and you're thinking about running for office. There are a few things that you should consider ahead of time when you're giving this some thought, some prayerful and serious consideration. Most campaigns are in fact evaluated before they officially begin. And people think about these through 4 different lenses. Donors will evaluate, or prospective donors will evaluate the viability of a campaign. Is this person a serious candidate? Is this person running in a race that makes sense to him or her? Is this person running in a district or an area of the state or the country where they can win? Not a lot of particularly high dollar donors are willing to invest in what they think out of the gate is a losing cause. The second thing that many people consider, that consultants consider, they are going to evaluate the survivability of a candidate and a campaign. Does this person have the ability to raise the money, to build out the team, to stay on message, to connect with voters, and to do all of that through 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, 18 months of a traditional campaign cycle here in American politics. Political party leaders consider and evaluate the trustworthiness of a candidate. So as a local unit committee chairman, I'm frequently involved in encouraging people to run for office, and in that process, multiple people may come to me and say, I'd like to run for office. Some of them may want to run for the same office as someone else, and I have to take a look at, can I trust this person? What are we going to find about this person in the last few weeks of a campaign? And in fact, I had a situation like that within the last several years where two prospective candidates came forward. We had it was past a primary process, so the political party was responsible for getting these candidates on the ballot, and we went through a thorough vetting process. And at the end of that process, one candidate had some questionable activity that just made it not possible for him to file with the permission of the political party. And so those are some things that the political infrastructure around your prospective candidacy or campaign will consider. And then activists want to know if you're authentic. More and more, especially where we are right now in the current political climate, people want candidates who are authentic, who are relatable, who, if you step on their front porch, they're going to say, you know what, we've had a brief conversation about the issues, I've considered where you came from in the community, and I trust you. And so candidates really have to be able to build that out, and a lot of those considerations are made before you even decide to run for office. The takeaway here, the main point that I want to share with you, is that politics is a credibility business. And if you give one of these four different universes, one of these four different communities, any reason to question your credibility, it's going to harm your ability to be a candidate. And so those four populations are really your pre-candidacy constituencies that you want to think about. And those political gatekeepers, now some people might call them the establishment, but there are political infrastructures in communities and in congressional districts and in states and commonwealths across the country who put up a reasonable process for which they select candidates, or for which voters or party members select or nominate candidates. There are 5 questions that these gatekeepers ask. The first question is, can this person win? Now, this question is answered on a number of levels. And when I talked about this just a moment ago, can this candidate win because he or she has a credible resume, which we'll talk about through this presentation? Can this candidate win because he or she is running in a community where the votes exist? I'm the chairman in my personal capacity in a community where 80% of my neighbors vote for far left candidates. That's a big question that we have to ask in that capacity. Can a candidate win in that race? And in fact, someone who does not represent the majority political viewpoint did win 12 years ago. So it's been a while, but the climate exists in a community like this from time to time to do it. So people want to know, can you win? Can you win as the candidate? Do you have the resume? Is the political reality such that you can cobble together enough votes to get across the finish line? The second question is so important, and this is something I hear from first-time candidates a lot, is can they raise money? It takes a lot of work, and it is humbling to sit through your desk. You're sitting at your desk one day and you open the drawer and you've got a stack of business cards from people that you've worked with or you've communicated with in the past, former coworkers, friends, people at church, people that you see out in the community. Do you have the strength and the ability to get on the phone with those individuals and raise the necessary money to take your campaign message to the voters on the airwaves, in mailboxes, and online? This question will stop many first-time candidates. Gatekeepers will ask this question, but I want you to ask yourself this question. Am I comfortable sitting down for hours at a time for something as small as a county commission race or a city council race or even a school board race? Am I comfortable enough sitting down and asking people for money on the phone, face-to-face, in other opportunities? Some people say no. I encourage conservatives in particular to reframe the question or reframe the mindset. You're not begging for money, which many people have said to me, it feels like I'm begging for money. You're actually asking investors to make a decision to invest in the ultimate political success for an outcome that would be beneficial to their political philosophy or ideology or their interests. So can they raise money? That's another question gatekeepers actually ask. The third question is, can you communicate effectively? I'm sitting here in the studio today, and I've got this lovely PowerPoint presentation I'm sharing with you, but if Emily and the Advanced School of Politics dropped me into a room of 500 people with no notes or no guidelines, I would, me personally, would probably fumble through the opportunity to communicate with you. I might jot down some notes. I wouldn't be nervous because over the years here at Leadership Institute and with other opportunities, I've been before audiences before, and I'm very comfortable in a setting like that. But some people are not. And this may be something that makes you really nervous. It may be difficult for you to organize your thoughts in a way that weaves your personal story through a public policy question to ask people for their votes. I encourage you to sit down and after you've watched this, do a little homework. Take an assessment of whether or not you're comfortable speaking before an audience, whether or not when you have the opportunity to speak before an audience that you're able to organize your thoughts, and whether or not you're able to do that in a way that comes off as reliable, relatable, and trustworthy. Because gatekeepers are going to ask those questions the first time they meet you. I met a candidate. Tell you guys a story. I met a candidate a few years ago, and it was right as he was announcing his campaign. And he had this really obnoxious tick that I immediately picked up on. And throughout our hour-long meeting where he was asking me questions and providing opportunities, so he had this obnoxious tick, and when I would ask him a direct question, he didn't seem to know how to answer the question. Now, these are some things that are immediately coachable, things that you can practice, things that you can work through. There are many resources here at Leadership Institute and other organizations that help you with that. But I encourage you to think about that. And actually, you can talk to your friends. Get a small group of friends together, give a speech, share your thoughts and ideas with them, and have them provide that feedback for you. The fourth question that gatekeepers actually ask is, can you survive scrutiny? So there are two layers to this question. It's, do you have embarrassing things in your past, bankruptcy or personal issues or things that will come out later in a campaign if you decide to run? But the other question is, how would you deal with that if something terrible like that happened on a campaign? I remember working for a candidate, it's been 16 or 17 years ago, who took these political attacks very personally. And we would sit at the end of a day on the campaign trail, and she would look at the mailers that had been mailed to voters and supporters and people across the community. And those mail pieces were on policy issues. They were highly critical. They weren't personal attacks on her, but they were on policy issues, very critical. And she would get very emotional about those. And one of the important things that we would talk through in those evening meetings is, we need you to get through this, grieve and respond in the way that you see fit this evening, but tomorrow morning when we go to the first breakfast event, or when you get interviewed by the local news, or when you get a question from a voter, we need you to be strong on it. So we practice that. So can you survive scrutiny? And the fifth question that gatekeepers ask is, can you build coalitions? Are you someone that people want to work with, that people want to naturally gravitate toward to solve important problems in your community? Because most of these issues, most of these campaigns that you may run, school board, county commission, city council, state legislature, even up to Congress and Senate, it's about building together, building a coalition of people to achieve a policy majority on an issue. So if you're difficult to work with, I'm sorry, friend, it's going to be very difficult to get you across the finish line. So those are 5 questions that gatekeepers are going to ask when they consider you as a candidate for office. And one of the way they answer these questions is the resume, your political, professional, and personal resume. This is a signal to them. Your resume tells those gatekeepers, those political professionals, and even voters and civic leaders in the community how seriously to take you. And so here's some things that you should consider. Do you have leadership? represented on your resume? Have you led a civic organization, a community organization, a business coalition? Do you have stability reflected on your resume? Are you, your professional resume, have you been at the same place? Or are you a real estate agent or an attorney or a teacher or somebody with some level of professional stability? And I would even also say geographic stability. There are some kinds of prospective candidates who say, well, I can't get elected in North Georgia where I live. I'm going to move to Kentucky, or I'm going to move to Ohio, and I'm going to run there. And then maybe they don't win that election. They say, well, I'm going to move to Kansas, or I'm going to move to Nebraska. That's called district shopping. And it is not especially a good idea for most people to do. Now, some people are successful, but it answers the question of credibility for those gatekeepers, and that is, this person is not stable. The third thing that people ask, these gatekeepers will ask based on your resume is this person professional? What kind of work do they do? Are they able to clean themselves up, put on a suit, or put on a professional attire to go out to an event? Now, you don't always have to look like this. We've got really great elected officials at all levels who represent rural and suburban communities who wear different kinds of outfits to connect with voters. I remember one time I went to a training in a suit like this, and it was with a veterans community, and a guy stood up and said, I don't know why we're listening to the guy in suits. This makes no sense. And it allowed me to think about what kind of audience I was speaking with, and then retool and change the way I presented myself. But are you professional? Do you have relationships with community leaders, with business leaders, with civic leaders, with political leaders who can then lend or build on your credibility? Do you have something that has shown a level of influence through your personal or professional or political life? Have you built something? Have you changed something? Have you won a policy fight at the local level? And then finally, do you have the discipline to go out and make the case for yourself and for your campaign? Those are the things when gatekeepers are asking those questions, when they're looking for answers, these are the signals that you're sending them. So the first part of this is we'll talk about what strong candidates have in common on their resume or in their professional and political presence. The first thing that I'd like to speak with you about is the 5 pillars of candidate credibility. And we've talked a little bit about this in the past couple of slides. The first one is leadership. I ran for office when I was 19 years old. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. The church was a large percentage of the voting population in this county commission district. People might ask, why is a 19-year-old running for office? We'll talk more about that. But I was a natural leader in the church that I grew up in, and there was a hyper-local issue that was impacting members of that congregation. So a number of individuals who were way more politically engaged and involved than me came to me and said, we'd like for you to run for office. So I was encouraged by the church. I'd taken on leadership responsibility in the church, even at a young age. And those individuals saw that leadership credibility through what I'd done in the youth group and in the church. You may have another story or another opportunity to express and showcase your leadership ability. The second pillar of candidate credibility is community roots. And I sort of hinted at the downside of district shopping a few minutes ago. But people want to know that you are invested in what's happening in that community. Imagine, if you will, I'll imagine I'm spending the summer at my grandmother's house when I was 5 or 6 years old. She would always watch a soap opera, and she would put me down for a nap and watch The Bold and the Beautiful, The Young and the Restless. And this was in the mid-90s, early to mid-90s. Those episodes, those shows have been going on for 30 or 40 or 50 years. You are joining a community that has decades or perhaps even centuries of political and civic history to it. So if you are new to the area, if you don't have ties to the area, people are going to naturally ask the question, how can you solve the problems when you don't know what we're dealing with? So some kind of community roots. If you're currently thinking about running for office but you don't have community roots, I encourage you, think about the issues that you care about at the local level. Identify an organization that is working to solve those issues, and then go out and get involved in that issue. What you'll find quite often is after about I mean, 6 to 18 months of being involved in a civic organization, you will get at least once somebody will ask you the question, well, have you ever thought about running for office? And what they're telling you is you have built up enough credibility in the community to be a candidate for office. The second or the third pillar is professional credibility. Again, that's what have you done professionally? What does your work history look like? Have you been successful in your career? Even if you haven't been successful, even if you've been an entrepreneur and you faced economic setback or a failure, how do you talk about that through the lens of change and learning and improving? The fourth pillar is your communication ability, the ability for you to have a conversation like this, or to speak to a single voter, or to speak to an audience, or to debate fellow candidates. And then finally, the relationships and fundraising capacity. People are going to say, is this person able to raise the money? Are they able to build the relationships? Are they able to cobble together the coalitions to build a governing majority at the ballot box? And in all of that, I want you to consider that your leadership history and your ability to lead really matters. You are, as a prospective candidate, as somebody who may be considering running for office, you are a leadership product that you have to sell yourself to voters and to the establishment, to political infrastructure. You are a product long before you decide to run for office. So let's say, for instance, I'm thinking about running for office in Arlington, where I've lived for 17 years. What are some of the things that people will think about? And let's go through each of these. So managing organizations, I currently lead a large partisan committee. It is the alternative to the political reality in Arlington. I've also been involved with some civic organizations and taken on leadership roles there. Having lived in Arlington for 17 years. The second thing is leading teams. I currently at work have a team of anywhere between 5 and 7 people at any given time. My leadership styles is such that I empower them to go out and accomplish their goals. So if you're thinking about being involved in the community, getting involved in the civic infrastructure or an opportunity, think about the kinds of people you surround yourself with and how you lead them. Do you empower them to go out and make decisions to help solve the problem? Do you micromanage their activities? Do you, are you hard to work with? Again, all these things that people consider. The third situation, or the third issue that I want you to think about here, is how good are you at running projects? Some people, and especially a kind of unserious candidate for office that I've seen from time to time, is somebody who will get fired up about something, want to run for office, or want to be involved in something, and then abandon it halfway through. Great example. I just had a conversation this morning with somebody who was just elected to a local party opportunity that she had, just elected in March of this year. Now, 8 weeks later, she is looking to move to a different part of the country and essentially abandon the position for which she was just elected. And this was something I had a conversation. This was not a prospective candidate, but it was somebody in the professional space. I said, you have just been elected to a role where if you stepped away today, what would the committee or what would the organization do? And so I encouraged her. I said, I love that you're thinking about what you're thinking about, but I want you to think about finishing the first project and then move on to the next one. And then the fourth issue, when it comes to your leadership ability as a product, as a prospective candidate, is producing measurable outcomes. Have you built a policy majority through civic organizations to go and win something? Have you fought and defeated a tax increase? Have you fought and defeated, say, an annexation by a city in your county? Have you organized and collaborated with people to bring economic opportunity to your community? All of those kinds of things are things that you can do before you ever file as a candidate for office. And titles matter, really, honestly, titles matter less than demonstrated responsibility. As somebody who leads a club of more than 100 dues-paying members, people will come up to me and they'll say, I want to do something. And I'll say, great, you're in charge of it now. And they will take on that responsibility, and then we'll worry about a title, or we'll build out the sort of official title of that role later. but it's what they've done because they've stepped up and been interested in taking on additional responsibility, and that's something that I think you should look at in your community if you're thinking about running for office. And I really can't stress enough the importance of community roots and visibility. Again, I would strongly discourage you district shopping or from moving from one area to the next or from one state to the next, because people want to know that you are there for the long haul. One of the downsides of me as a prospective candidate in my community right now is that I am a renter, which hinders my ability to develop community roots. Now, there are a lot of renters in Arlington, but the real divide in politics in Arlington is the divide that exists between single-family homeowners and the rest of the political interests that exist in this community. So serious candidates often come from the home ownership area, parts of the county. So what are some things that you think about, you should think about? Strong candidates are visible before they run. You show up to the Lions Club, you show up to community events, you show up to charitable organizations and galas and things to show that you are interested in what is happening in the community. Those local instances, those instances where you become involved in something, create opportunities for people to trust you. You show up to an event, you get involved, there's something that you really care about. Maybe it's a taxpayer protection organization at the local level. Let's say you live in Fairfax here in Virginia, you're opposed to high taxes. You show up, you get involved in this group. You work through a couple cycles, you show up to a county board meeting, you make a public statement against whatever tax increase they're certainly going to enact. And now you've built trust among that population of people who care about the issue that you showed up to and fight alongside with them. The third thing that you want to consider here when it pertains to community roots and visibility is your investment in the community matters. If you're running for school board, do your children go to the schools in the district? If you are running for Congress, this is something I see a lot. Do you actually live in the district? Now, a lot of places have residency requirements, but for Congress, you don't actually have to live in the district in which you're running. You just have to live in the state. But that is something where voters will say, well, he doesn't even live here, or he's brand new to the area, or he just moved from somewhere else. All of those things that people will ask. Some examples of how to get involved in your community include finding a faith community, finding a church, getting appointed to boards and commissions. You can do that in the business community, in the charitable community. You can also get appointed to many boards and commissions through the local government. Your county commission or your city council often has citizen-run boards and commissions, and they take appointments from members of the community. Nonprofits and charitable organizations, civic groups, and then additional volunteer leadership. If you don't see something that should be done in the community, there's not an organization, there's not a nonprofit, there's not an interest group. Starting an organization is also an opportunity for you to show your leadership abilities. So if you don't see someone doing something that you think should be done in the community, you might start an organization and build a coalition to advance that public policy issue that you care about. And again, this professional credibility is something that I think about a lot. What does your career communicate to a voter? A lot of times, particularly at the state legislative level, you have legislatures which are part-time, or even if they're full-time, they're not year-round. So you have to think about, can I work and do this job? In the state of Tennessee, state legislators get paid, I think, $18,000 or $20,000 a year, plus basically an allowance for every day that they're in the General Assembly, and it amounts to about $35,000 a year, between $35,000 and $40,000 a year. What else can you do, or what else are you doing as a professional in your career that allows you to make up the rest of the money that you think that you need to live a comfortable life? And so from the other perspective is, what do you do professionally? Are you and what kind of work is it? Your expertise in a given area builds authority. So let's say that you are a teacher. You work in a K-12 school in your community, or you work at a parochial school or a private school. You're naturally going to be, people will naturally think that you have some credibility in the education space, so it may lend you the ability to run for school board. The second part is the stability. That stability builds confidence. If you jump from job to job, if you you worked at one business and you worked at another, and you look at your resume and over the span of 2 years you've worked at 5 or 6 different places, people are going to say, this person isn't serious in their professional life. If they get elected, are they going to serve out a full term? Many terms being 2 or 4 years or longer. So you want to express that stability in your professional credibility. And then finally, that achievement builds trust. What have you gone out and done with your work life that allows people to say, hey, that guy or that gal is successful. He or she, if they get elected, they've got a proven track record to accomplish things in the workplace. It's reasonably safe to assume that they're going to be able to achieve something if they get elected. So those 3 things you want to consider. And political resumes are very often an extension of your professional resume. And especially up here in Washington, D.C., I see a good mix of both. People who will put their career information in one part of the resume and their political or civic information in the second part. So all of these things are things you want to consider if you want people to think that you are a successful professional if you're considering running for office. The other thing that I'd like you to think about is communication and fundraising. We've talked a little bit about both of these throughout this presentation, but I really want to drill down. Are you comfortable? We'll start with communication. Are you comfortable? Your ability to connect, to inspire, and to persuade people to join your side. A lot of times you're going to go door to door, or you're going to talk to a population, a civic group, or an organization, and they're going to be people in the audience who they don't trust you, or they don't think they agree with you 100%, particularly in a nominating contest for a political party. And so the way that you can overcome some of that is practice public speaking. There's some really great groups that will help you with this. Toastmasters, which does not advertise on this webinar or any others, but I know many people who've gone through Toastmasters programming and who've come out much more comfortable and confident in their ability to present ideas in front of an audience. There are many other groups like that. You'll want to practice interviews. I had a situation a number of years ago where a statewide candidate for office, I laugh about this every time I think about it, but he sat down with a local ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox affiliate, and the interviewer, a woman, asked him a series of questions. The entire conversation was about 15 minutes, and then at the end of it, he said, now you're going to air this interview start to finish, aren't you? Because, you're not going to edit this and clip it up. Well, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think he sounded especially credible to begin with, but certainly they weren't going to take his long meandering answers and play them, start to finish in a 6 o'clock broadcast. So a lot of people are really uncomfortable, and many people don't have experience with television interviews. I encourage you to find those opportunities to do it. And even I would say, watch your local news. Watch how the reporters interview sort of the man on the street interview, or they interview policymakers, and practice that. The third element of communication here is persuasion. Can you get someone on your side, or can you at least neutralize somebody who would be, and I'll explain that term in just a minute, neutralize somebody who might be an adversary. So what I often see candidates do is they'll say, you know what, we agree on this issue, and this issue. I can tell you're really passionate about this 4th issue, and we don't agree. And candidates will often say, I understand, and I think it is okay to have a difference of opinion. I would love to work with you on these first 3 issues that we do agree on. Or if it's an issue where somebody is undecided, or they are in soft opposition to your point of view, you can have those one-on-one conversations to persuade them to come over to your side. There's a lot of issues, most people, when they're sitting at home and you knock on the door, they haven't just finished reading a really long policy proposal. So they may not be particularly educated on an issue. They may have preconceived notions about an issue that just aren't true, or that are different than what has happened over the course of this issue playing out in the community. You being a representative of a political party, or of your candidacy, or of the ability of you to cobble together votes, you have that tremendous opportunity to persuade someone to come alongside you on that issue and to support and take the same position as you. And the very important aspect of this is message discipline. You know, most campaigns are about 2 or 3 issues. So let's say the issues on your campaign are jobs and the economy and high taxes. So you want to bring jobs to your community. You want an economy that people can live, work, and play. They can raise a family there. They can afford to buy a house and all of that good stuff. And taxes, affordability. If somebody asks you about an issue that is not one of the issues that you're running on, which will often happen, it is important for you to stay on message. Are you able to stay on message? You know, that's a really interesting point, Emily. But most of the voters that I'm talking to today and over the course of this campaign are really interested in the economic prospect of this community, which was hollowed out, you know, after the Great Recession. So staying on message and you know, you are not responsible, especially to reporters, to answer the question that you wish you'd been asked. You're responsible for talking about the message and your campaign's message. On the fundraising side, your ability to build support and secure resources is incredibly important, and you do that through a number of ways. Your personal relationships, oftentimes serious candidates when you file for office. I had a friend who just won a very expensive primary in West Virginia, and I remember a year ago he called me and he said, "Hey man, I'm going to run for office. Can you donate to my campaign?" And we talked about it, and I donated a little bit of money, and I said, "Well, who else are you calling?" And he said, "I'm calling anybody that I'd had a political or professional relationship with over the last 15 years. So those relationships, personal, the individuals you know personally or professionally, are your first donors. Beyond that, it's who are their networks? Who are the people who, let's say, you know, my buddy calls me, he asks me for a contribution. He may then ask, do you have 2 or 3 other people who may be interested in supporting my campaign? And I may give him a name or two and the contact information. Also, because I'm the chairman of a local partisan committee, there's a natural network of people in that community, members of that organization, who might also be interested in donating. So personal relationships and the networks through those relationships, and all of that is built on trust. Can I trust you? Do we have a pre-existing relationship? Do I know you from the community? And can I trust that if I contribute to you, you're going to spend that money wisely to an effort that is likely to win, or that is, you know, at least 50-50. And then your professional contacts. And I encourage you, you want to follow all applicable state laws. I know I've had a number of prospective candidates who have been in the finance and investment industry. There are prohibitions on who you can solicit for money for personal or political things. This is not a compliance conversation, but I want you to know that many of your professional contacts are also personal contacts, and you should be comfortable making the request or making the ask. Campaigns run on your ability to communicate and the relationships that you build through communication and through fundraising. That is it. A candidate is supposed to raise money, build coalitions, and knock doors and get votes. Those 3 things are very important, and it is all predicated on your ability to communicate and to manage and build relationships. Now, some people, you know, it's the current year, and we see these flash in the pan candidates, somebody who produces a video that makes a lot of noise on the internet. There was a woman who's run for Congress in a couple of states now. She just lost a primary in Texas. She's definitely on the celebrity side. So let's talk about the difference between credibility versus celebrity. You want to be a credible candidate for office. Let's take these one at a time. Viral moments, so you want to be credible. The attention is not the same as viability. A viral moment will fade quickly. Think about the news that you've consumed over the last few days. If you watch the local news, if you watch headline news, if you're scrolling on X or social media, just think about the stories that you've watched over the last few days. Now go back a week and a half and think about the stories that were playing out in the local news or on social media a week and a half ago. Do you remember those stories? No, probably not. I know I don't know what I watched in the news yesterday. Anyway. So those viral moments fade very quickly. And you can you can produce a video that's super exciting and it goes viral, but after 72 or 96 hours, those moments die and they're replaced by something else. Viral moments do get attention, but they do fade quickly. On the credibility side, your infrastructure matters. You can be personable. Look, you can be, there's a couple of celebrities running for office right now, and I guarantee people want to get in front of them. They want to meet them. They want to be part of that effort because there's a bit of celebrity element to it. But it takes an additional step. So if you have a celebrity moment, if there are celebrities who are running for office, if you have high name ID on social media, or you've built out a universe as an influencer, you want to translate that personality into infrastructure. So people come and get involved. Maybe you make the news, you go viral. You then have to have a way to keep people involved and to show that you're a serious candidate. Now there was one. And I realize we're recording this in perpetuity, but there was a candidate in recent time who is a celebrity. The outcome of that election is to be determined at the time of this recording. But I was watching his early campaign, and I said, wow, this guy's a celebrity. He's got great people putting videos together for him. It's dynamic. It's very exciting. And then I watched, and I said, okay, he's a celebrity, though. And then I watched his debate performance with the other candidates, including the incumbent. And the guy knew facts and figures, and he knew how to articulate those facts and figures, and he knew how to go on offense against the incumbent. And I was really, really impressed. This has happened recently. And so that he's got that personality, he's got a bit of celebrity, but he has the knowledge and the understanding and the ability to communicate on the back end to stay, to attract more voters. And then finally, on the celebrity side, fame doesn't equal governance. You should be mindful of that. Serious candidates are oftentimes built slowly through community involvement and investment. These celebrity candidates are a once in a cycle or two thing. It's very likely that you're not going to be one of them, and I encourage you to do it the traditional way, which will lend more credibility to you and your prospective campaign. Audience interaction, you can think about that in a way, and even think about those viral candidate moments that you've seen online recently, and think about whether or not those people end up winning. So section 2 here is common candidate mistakes. I've changed the color here so that you know there's some very serious issues in the next few slides. And so here's some things that prospective candidates do, weaknesses that I want you to be mindful of. And if this is something that is a problem for you, thinking about it now and solving it and overcoming it is very important. Oftentimes we tell candidates in campaigns to do what we call a SWOT analysis. So you sit down and you articulate your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. You do this in business, you do this on the campaign trail. So we're going to focus right now on the weakness aspect of this. And this takes a level of humility and self-reflection that can be difficult to muster takes a little bit of narcissism to run for office too, but it takes a lot of humility and self-reflection to consider this. So let's go through 5 common weaknesses. The first one is no leadership history. You haven't gotten involved, you've shown up. I see these candidates all the time. I have seen them in my community over the last 15, 16 years. I have never seen one of them win in my personal experience. So no leadership history. Weakness number 2 is they're activists, but there's no execution. And I see myself as I'm an activist. I like to go out and protest. I like to go out and rile people up and educate them about the issues. But on the back end of that, I want people to go and do something and to change policy. So activism without execution is another weakness. This is one, the viral, there's a young lady, again, who's run for Congress in a number of states. I think she's very much in this space, activism without execution. Number 3 is no community roots. We've talked about this, I think, at length through a couple of these slides. You want to develop some kind of roots in the community so that people think that you know what is happening in the community, and so they take you seriously. Number 4 is social media problems. You've got Twitter X, you've got Instagram, you've got Snapchat, I mean, you've seen very recently a statewide candidate for office whose campaign unraveled, and one of the things that was a problem was a social media presence on Snapchat. So if you've got a fake Instagram, what they call a Finsta, if you've got an anonymous social media account, I just want you to know a good sleuth, a good opposition research team is going to be able to find that and tie that to you. And so you want to be very mindful about what you're doing on the internet. And then finally, you're running too early. And I think about my time when I was 19 years old, the members of my church encouraged me to run for office. I decided to run. I do think that there were some elements of credibility that was lent to me by the fact that members of my church ran or asked me to run, but a number of people on the campaign trail said, "You don't own property here. You'll vote to raise my taxes." Not true. You haven't lived long enough. You don't know what's going. You don't know the struggles of making a mortgage or getting the kids to school on time. All those things are reasonable things, reasonable weaknesses that I had as a young candidate, and those were things that I learned when I tell people I got it out of my system to run for office. So you want to think about these common weaknesses. Do you have leadership history? If you're an activist, have you executed? Have you solved a problem? Have you built a coalition? Have you raised money and awareness for something? Number three, do you have community roots? If you don't have community roots, how can you overcome that? Social media problems, that is up for you to decide. What's your social media presence? And then, is this the right time for you to run? If you avoid these pitfalls, that is going to strengthen your credibility, again, the thing that we're looking for here, and your candidacy. We'll talk a little bit more about social media and your reputation. Everything online is now part of your political resume, and everything online can be discovered in perpetuity, even if you delete it. So screenshots are permanent. If you are in a text group with more than yourself, somebody could very likely screenshot that. We had a situation in Tennessee a few years ago. There were literally 3 people in a text group that talked about illicit drug activity and other things. Well, somehow those text messages leaked. Well, there are only 3 people in the group. It was one of the people in the group. So even if you've got a meme chat with your friends or family, just know that more than one person in a group could be problematic, and those individuals could be taking screenshots of the activity that you're engaged in. Impulsiveness damages trust. So a lot of people will, in the heat of the moment, something political is happening, they'll tweet it out, or they'll post it on Facebook, or they'll post it on Instagram. I encourage people, write it out, read it, consider it, and delete it. That impulsiveness, take just a moment to take a breath and say, is this wise? Is this brilliant? It's probably not. My stuff isn't brilliant. Your stuff isn't brilliant. Will it be remembered in 5 years? Certainly it won't be unless it's embarrassing. And so take a moment to put it out there, well, not put it out there, but write it out, read it, delete it, because part of that is going to damage the impulsiveness aspect of that is going to damage the level of trust that voters can have for you. Professionalism matters. There's a number of different ways number of different directions we can talk about. If you use coarse language, there's an elected official in Virginia who loves using coarse language. It has recently come up in the current media cycle, and it's not professional. Carry yourself professionally. And then finally, political maturity matters. You may change on an issue. You may evolve on an issue. You may change the way you communicate. I can tell you from personal experience, when I first got involved in politics, I was take the pitchfork to the county party headquarters and demand acceptance. 17 years in, almost 20 years in now, I am let's build a policy coalition to nominate candidates who can win and will not embarrass us. And so I've matured politically, and a lot of people do, and I encourage you to consider, have you matured to the point where people will trust you? I want you to think about those things. So the last one here is on things that you should consider is timing matters. And I've expressed and explained a number of times how I was too young to run for office when I was 19 years old. But there's different elements of timing here that I want you to think about. A lot of people run for office before you've built up enough credibility, before you're actually ready. And so the things I want you to consider are that political careers usually compound over time. In Virginia, we have elections every single year, and I've been around for every single election cycle, and each time I've built a bigger coalition, a broader coalition, a more impactful coalition. The second thing is relationships take time. Let's say you do move to a new community and you're putting down roots in a place that you think you want to buy a home and raise a family. It takes time to build out relationships with people in the community. Your reputation takes time, and then finally the building out the political infrastructure takes time. If you're expecting someone to donate to your campaign, to show up to an event, to knock doors for you, to carry, to take your message to their community, to their civic organization, all of those things take time for someone to say, yes, I'm going to lend you some of my credibility and take your message to people. So ambition without preparation usually gets exposed very quickly. So I want you to think about that. And then finally, in the last few minutes, I'm going to talk about how you can build a candidate profile. What I want you to do is build intentionally. The significant point here is that strong candidates rarely appear overnight. You're not going to show up in the studio with me today. I've never met you, and you said, I'm going to run for office here in Arlington. That's not going to happen. And if it does, it's unfortunate for you, you're not going to win. And so you want to think about this and build intentionally. Build your reputation. Your reputation compounds over time. Build the relationships. Those relationships, the first people you meet when you move to a new place, can introduce you to their personal and professional networks. You can get involved in an organization. And then your experience compounds. Each of these things compound over time to where you get to a point where enough people are asking you, hey, have you ever considered running for office? And I think when you get that question more than once or twice, that's the time when I think you may be in your era or period where you are credible enough to run for office. And so here's how you might build out a political development plan step by step. The first is to seek out those leadership opportunities. Get involved in a civic organization, get involved in a partisan organization, get involved in a charity or a nonprofit. When you show up, you'll say, hey, what can I do to help out? Do you need someone to do this? Do you need someone to run to Costco and get the hamburgers and hot dogs for the summer cookout? When you start taking on those leadership opportunities and capabilities, then people will start to naturally say, oh, this person could take on an additional role. And then you'll get those opportunities to speak publicly. I encourage you to look for opportunities, seek out opportunities to practice your public speaking. It could be through Toastmasters, it could be through going to the city council or to the school board or to the county commission and talking about the issues that you care about, organizing your thoughts in a 1 to 2 minute presentation. And then once you've done that a couple of times, your ability to be involved in your community will expand. You may be elected to a leadership position in a community organization. You can also get involved in campaigns. So let's say there's a member of Congress who is, getting ready for the midterm elections or is right in the middle of this election cycle. I encourage you identify the opportunity for a candidate who is philosophically or politically aligned with you to get involved and to learn what it is to knock on doors, to make phone calls, to show up at events, to execute events, do all of those things that take place on a campaign. And then number 5 here is networking. Building beyond your initial, the initial community that you have built out. And you want to be very thoughtful, about each one of those things, understanding that each of them compound and build over time. So intentional steps, these are intentional steps today, which will lead you to political or professional or civic impact tomorrow. And then just very quickly, the advice by audience type. So you're listening today and you're at various stages in your career, in your life. If you're a young person thinking about running for office, I have mentioned throughout this presentation what it was like to be 19 years old, a freshman in college. The questions that people are going to ask are, is this person credible? Are they qualified? They don't own property. How are they going to vote on these important issues? Your youth and inexperience will be an issue for you. So if you're thinking about running as a young person, as a student, know that that is going to be a significant hurdle for you. Young professionals, the question that people ask is, how far along in their career are they? Do they have roots in the community? Are they involved? Are they just trying to run to make a name for themselves? So those kinds of things you have to think about. For activists, it's sure, this person shows up all the time, but have they actually won a policy fight in their community? Have they actually ever moved the ball down the field? And then staffers, and we've had this happen, especially in the D.C. area, where a longtime staffer for a member of Congress decides that he or she has inherited the seat after the member retires or passes away. And so, you got to think about that. If you're a staffer for a member of Congress, or you're a staffer for a state legislator, they're going to ask, people are going to ask questions about why are you running, and be able to answer, you want to be able to answer those questions. And then you want to continue to ask some questions for yourself, and some of those questions include, what does my resume currently communicate? If someone were to look at my resume, what would they think of me? Would serious political stakeholders, donors, consultants, political party leaders take me seriously? What credibility gaps need to be filled? Where are the gaps in my resume, and what can I do in the interim to build up those gaps, build up the experience there and eliminate those gaps? And then what should I build over the next 18 months or 3 to 5 years that when I finally decide to run, people will say, that's a credible candidate. He or she's been involved in the community. They're knowledgeable on the issues. I trust them. I'm willing to get involved. So all of those things are questions you should ask yourself. The best candidates, as I said at the beginning of this section, build intentionally. I want to thank you for your time. My name is Matthew Hurtt. I'm Director of Professional Services here at Leadership Institute. This has been an Advanced School of Politics presentation on building your candidate resume. These are ways that you can identify me and reach out to me online and via email. Thank you so much. So this question time is because you've joined us live. I'm going to stick around. I'm actually going to have some tea, and I can be a little more personable with you.
All right, let's see. What keeps the average working class American from running for office?
Great question. So Emily, what keeps the average working class American from running for office? Everybody is busy with something, but my dad was an electrician at an electrical utility for his entire life. He worked 40 hours a week was the minimum that he worked. He often worked 60 or 80 hours a week, especially around Christmas, because he was providing for my mom and my sister and me. And what is before Christmas? Election day. So he had all of these things. If my dad ever wanted to run for county commission, he would not have been able to, because he was an hourly employee at an electrical utility, blue-collar guy. He worked his tail off up until retirement. And it just would not have been a reality for him. And then, if he had run for county commission, the county commission pay was $200 a month for meetings that were multiple times a month. So the time commitment. A lot of people who are very busy, and especially blue collar and working class people, are they just don't have the time commitment. And many people, all of these are a trade-off. Working class people work a lot. If you want to raise a family, for the first 10 years of my time in D.C., I joked that I was married to my job, and I traveled 7 out of 8 weeks in a 2-month cycle. And there's a lot of things that you can't do if you have to show up to the Lincoln Reagan Day, if you have to show up to the county commission meeting, if you have to go down to the Capitol for state legislative session. There are things that you can't do. All of those are trade-offs. And you have to think, do I have the time commitment? Can I commit the time to run? And if elected, do I have the time to do the job? The county commission, or the county board here in Arlington, Virginia, is a part-time county board. they get paid $120,000 a year. Ridiculous. Part-time county board. But it is in reality a full-time job. There are multiple meetings a week. There are community events that they have to show up to. And so you basically, if you're running for county board in Arlington, you know I'm not going to be able to do anything else if I get elected. And so we end up getting professional activists who get elected here in Arlington. But it's the time commitment is really important. Great question. I don't want to, and as Emily tees up and finds the next question, I don't want to discourage someone from running for office if you are from that, because I don't think that we have enough of those voices and perspectives. And maybe it isn't, you have to find the level of office that you run for. Or maybe it is finding a candidate who can really speak to your issues, who can represent you and your professional community or your blue collar, the existence of whatever it is in your community, who can go and fight for those issues. You may not get elected to office, but you want to support a candidate who will be a fighter on your issues. Great question.
All right, I'm going to take one more question just because we are over time right now. But in your experience, Matt, how long does it take to build a meaningful relationship with a new group of people?
It depends. It is like, and I'm gonna answer the question in panic mode. Asking that question, and I'm not attributing this to you, but asking that question can sound like I am plotting to build this relationship for this outcome. And I know that's not the case. But some people do ask the question, and that's the case. They say, how long do I have to interact with the college Republicans or with the realtors or with the League of Women Voters before they'll trust me? And because then I want to do something next. And so that's my panic answer to the question. That is not a good, but it really it really depends. Are you personable? Can you show up to an event? Can you show up to meetings? When you show up, do you get to know the people there? I always have name tags at my committee meetings, and we have anywhere between 50 and 110 or 15 people who show up, and I know at every one of those meetings there's going to be at least one person who doesn't know other people in the room. So I have people put on name tags, and I give 30 minutes of interaction beforehand so that people can go out and find somebody they like. We just had a happy hour, a networking event last night. And it was, and people came away from it and said, this was a really great opportunity. I didn't know many of the members of the committee, and this was a great opportunity to socialize where we didn't have to have a meeting. So it's being thoughtful about building those relationships, offering to take on a leadership responsibility. Hey, do you need some help with the county fair? Do you need some help with this? And then when you offer to help, you follow through and you do it. And that is the quickest way to build a relationship in a civic infrastructure that is volunteer driven. So I encourage you to find something you like doing, show up to a meeting of people who are doing that stuff, and be nice and offer to help.
All right, we are over time. Thank you so much, Matt. That was awesome. I hope you all enjoyed it. Just really quickly before we end, I want to remind you all of our upcoming schools. Upcoming schools are the Campaign Leadership College, the Candidate Development School, and the Comprehensive Fundraising Training. All of those QR codes, if you scan them, it will take you to links for more information and for the application link. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat about those further. That being said, thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you next time.